On the morning of my sister's wedding, I drove up the winding coastal road toward the entrance of Coral Pines Resort, feeling something warm bloom in my chest, something like hope or pride or maybe relief, that after 12 long years of raising Chloe alone, I would finally get to see her step into the life she always dreamed of. But before my hope could settle, something else caught my eye, a jarring smear of red against the clean white stone of the resort gate. At first I thought it was part of the decor, maybe a sign welcoming guests. Then my heart kicked hard, thudding once-twice, and I hit the brakes so abruptly my old sedan lurched. There, hanging on a metal frame taller than me, was a poster-sized printout of my face. A real photograph taken maybe a year ago when I wasn't posing, when I wasn't dressed up, when I was simply me. A diagonal streak of red paint slashed across my face, and beneath it in bold block letters, the words screamed back at me, "Do not let this person in." A security guard stepped forward, arms folded, stance firm. Before I could speak, he repeated those awful words slowly, as if he'd been rehearsing them. "Ma'am, you are not allowed to enter." I lifted my eyes, desperate to find anyone who could explain this cruelty. And that's when I saw her. Chloe, my little sister. Standing on the second-floor balcony in her ivory gown, the gown I paid for, lifting a glass of champagne. She looked down at me, sunlight catching on her veil, and she smiled. Not the trembling smile of someone who'd made a mistake. No. It was a smile of relief, as if by shutting me out she had freed herself from a burden she'd been carrying for far too long. For a moment I couldn't breathe. That smile broke something in me I didn't know was still fragile. I stayed inside the car longer than I intended, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers tingled. The guard waited in stiff silence. I heard people laughing somewhere beyond the gate, music drifting from the reception area, the soft clink of glassware. It felt like another world entirely, one I thought I belonged to today, one I had helped build. "Ma'am," the guard said again, his tone firmer now, "you'll need to turn around. This is a restricted entrance." Restricted entrance. Like I was a threat. Like I was dangerous. I swallowed, my throat dry. There must be a mistake, I managed. I'm the bride's sister. The guard didn't even blink. His eyes flicked to the poster. Instructions came directly from the bride. The word bride stung more than I expected. Not Chloe. Not Guy Toy. Just bride, someone who no longer belonged to me. Behind him, a group of bridesmaids in pastel silk dresses walked past, giggling until one spotted me. Her laughter died instantly. She leaned toward another girl, whispering, "I thought Chloe said her sister wasn't coming." The other shrugged as if I were a stranger. I stepped out of the car slowly, my legs unsteady. My dress, simple navy blue chosen so I wouldn't outshine anyone, suddenly felt all wrong. I smoothed my hands over my skirt, more out of instinct than purpose. I tried again. "Let me talk to her," I said softly. "Please." The guard lifted his walkie-talkie but paused, shaking his head. Instructions were explicit. No exceptions. The humiliation settled like dust over my skin. Dry. Harsh. Familiar in a way I wished it wasn't. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, seeing Chloe's name flash across the screen. A moment of hope flickered. Maybe she'd realized how cruel this was. Maybe she'd run downstairs apologizing. I answered immediately. "Chloe," but the only sound was laughter, distant clapping, the hum of music. She wasn't talking to me. She hadn't meant to call me. Someone must have bumped her phone, or maybe she simply didn't care. I lowered the phone. My fingers trembled, but I forced them still. I wouldn't break down in front of strangers. I wouldn't beg my own sister to let me into a wedding I had paid for. A soft voice spoke behind me. "Are you okay?" I turned to see a young server in a crisp uniform holding a tray of sparkling water. His expression was gentle, apologetic in a way that cut deeper than hostility. "I'm sorry," he whispered, glancing nervously toward the guard. "We were told if we let you inside we might be fired." The words hit with dull force. That meant Chloe had planned this carefully. She didn't panic this morning and act impulsively. No, she had sent instructions. She had given orders. She had rewritten the rules to exclude me entirely. The server hesitated, then added, I shouldn't say this, but she told us you might cause a scene. You don't look like someone who would, but... That's what she said. My heart, already bruised, cracked a little more. Thank you, I whispered, though I'm not sure why. Maybe for his honesty. Maybe for lowering his gaze out of respect when everyone else looked at me like an inconvenience. He hurried away before the guard noticed. And there I stood. Melissa Hawkins, 35 years old, a woman who had worked 2 jobs for most of her 20s to raise a little girl who wasn't old enough to tie her own shoes when our parents died. A woman who had bought the dress that Chloe now twirled in upstairs, who paid for the venue deposit, who covered every invoice that made this dream wedding possible. A woman who somehow had been deemed unfit to stand inside the very celebration she built. I lifted my eyes again to the balcony. Chloe had turned away now, greeting Brad's relatives, laughing gracefully, like she belonged to this polished world and always had. Like she hadn't been a child crying herself to sleep 12 years ago, clinging to my arm because she didn't know how to live without our mother. And for the first time since she was 10, she didn't look like my little sister. She looked like a stranger wearing borrowed confidence. Something in me settled then. Not acceptance, not forgiveness, something colder, clearer. The kind of clarity that comes only when a wound stops bleeding and starts turning into a scar. I took a slow breath. The ocean was visible from where I stood, a long line of bright blue stretching behind the resort. Waves broke gently against the rocks. The world kept moving indifferent to my humiliation. The guard stepped forward again. "Ma'am, you'll need to leave now." His voice wasn't cruel, it was procedural, and that somehow made it worse. I nodded, brushing past him with what little dignity I had left. I climbed back into my car, closing the door quietly as though any loud sound might shatter the fragile calm clinging to my chest. Through the windshield, the poster still stared back at me, my own face marked like a warning label. Unwelcome, unwanted, a threat. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed. My fingers curled around the steering wheel, steady now. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't storm through the gates demanding justice. I simply turned the car around. Halfway down the hill, I glanced into the rearview mirror. The gate was getting smaller, but the sting of that sign didn't fade. Neither did the image of Chloe's smile, bright, relieved, free. Free of me. I exhaled slowly. If that was the freedom she wanted, then she could have it. But freedom always comes with a cost. And she had no idea what hers would be. The sun glinted on the water as I reached the coastal road, guiding me forward like a line of molten gold. I loosened my grip on the steering wheel. My pulse slowed. My mind sharpened. By the time the resort disappeared behind a curve of trees, one thought rose above all others, calm and steady, like a truth I had always known but never said aloud. You taught her to stand without you. But she forgot who held her up. And as another wave crashed against the rocks somewhere far below, I knew something had changed inside me, not broken, but shifted. Like a door quietly closing. Like the beginning of an ending. The rehearsal was supposed to be simple: walk down the aisle, smile for pictures, check the timing with the wedding planner, and enjoy a quiet dinner with the wedding party. That's what I told myself as I drove through the sunlit entrance of Coral Pines the evening before the wedding. The air smelled of salt and jasmine, and the light dipped just enough to make the whole resort glow like something out of a magazine. For a moment, I let myself pretend everything was fine. I arrived early, hoping to help, to feel included, to be part of the day before everything became official. Chloe always loved celebrations. When she was little, she used to make me rehearse fairy tale weddings with stuffed animals and paper veils, laughing until her tiny ribs shook. I had carried those memories into adulthood, maybe foolishly believing that somewhere beneath the polished surface of the woman she'd become, that same little girl still existed. But the air shifted as soon as I stepped onto the rehearsal lawn. It wasn't obvious at first, just subtle glances, half smiles that didn't reach the eyes, the sudden quiet when I approached. The wedding party stood near the mock altar while the planner, Mark, arranged everyone into position. Bridesmaids in blush satin, groomsmen in fitted navy suits, and Brad smiling tightly as though the entire world revolved around him. I walked toward them, clutching a small gift bag for Chloe in one hand, the vintage earrings our mother used to wear on special occasions. I hoped tonight would be the right time to give them to her. Melissa Mark called when he spotted me. "Good, you're early." But he didn't look relieved. His eyes flicked briefly toward Chloe like he was checking for permission. Chloe's gaze followed his, and she smiled at me, thin, controlled, polite, in a way that made my stomach dip. "You made it," she said, as though she hadn't texted me that morning, asking if I could bring extra safety pins and blotting sheets. As though I were a distant acquaintance, not the person who raised her from a child into the woman she was. Before I could answer, two bridesmaids leaned together behind her. One whispered, not quite softly enough, "I thought Chloe said her sister might skip the rehearsal. I heard she wasn't invited to the bridal brunch," the other murmured. I kept my face neutral, even as something hot and acidic slid down my spine. Mark cleared his throat. "All right, everyone, let's get into place. Bridesmaids on the left, groomsmen on the right." Chloe slipped into the center of the group with Brad, who rested his hand on her back as if guiding her. When I stepped forward to stand beside her instinctively, the way an older sister would, Chloe's hand flew out gently but firmly, blocking my path. "Oh," she said with a small laugh. "Actually, Melissa, you're not part of the processional. It's just the bridal party." My mouth parted, then closed. "I thought I would walk you down the aisle," I said quietly enough that only she could hear me. She blinked as though surprised I'd remembered her words from months ago. "Oh, well, Brad's mom will do that. It's more traditional. And it looks coordinated. Coordinated, meaning I did not fit." I stepped back, hands clasped together to keep them from shaking. Mark cast me a sympathetic glance, but he stayed silent. He had to be professional, and besides, he knew better than anyone that the bride's preferences ruled everything, even when they rewrote the family dynamic in real time. Rehearsal began, and I stood to the side watching as Chloe glided down the aisle, elegant and glowing. Brad watched her like she was a prize he deserved for being who he was. And everyone else clapped on cue, admiring what they believed was a picture-perfect couple. But the picture had a crack running through it, and I was standing in the shadow of it. After the walkthrough, we moved into the banquet hall for the rehearsal dinner. The room was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, table runners embroidered with gold thread candles floating in glass bowls. "Melissa," I reminded myself, "you helped pay for this. You made this possible." I found a seat near the middle of the long farm-style table, but before I could settle, one of the bridesmaids gestured delicately to the far end. "Oh, Melissa, the family section is over there. Family." But I had raised Chloe. I was the closest she had to a parent. Still, I swallowed my pride and moved to the indicated seat, trying not to notice the subtle nod Chloe gave the bridesmaid, as though approving a necessary correction. Dinner began with clinking glasses and photographs. Toasts were made mostly by Brad's relatives, speaking about legacy prestige and the merging of two well-positioned families. Each one made the distance between me and Chloe feel larger. When a small lull fell over the table, I leaned toward Chloe. "I brought something for you," I said softly, lifting the gift bag. She tensed. "Oh, maybe later. There's too much attention right now." "It's from Mom," I whispered, hoping she'd understand its meaning. Chloe's expression flickered, then hardened. "Not now, Mel. Please. Mel. Not Melissa, not Liz, not Sis. Mel, the name she used to call me when she was annoyed as a teenager." I leaned back, the earrings suddenly feeling heavier in my hand. So this was the new version of her. Untouchable. Curated. Afraid of being reminded where she came from. The worst part wasn't that she pushed me aside, it was that she didn't see she was doing it. After dessert, people began to mingle. I stepped outside to breathe, leaning against one of the stone pillars near the balcony. The view of the ocean stretched out endlessly, comforting in its vastness. The breeze cooled the heat in my chest. I didn't realize someone had followed me until I heard his voice. "Melissa." I turned to see Mark approaching. His face held that careful mixture of concern and professional restraint. "Hey, I said, forcing a smile. "Everything okay with the rehearsal?" "Everything's fine," he replied. "But I wanted to warn you." He lowered his voice, glancing behind him. "Chloe asked us to make some adjustments to the guest layout. She said certain family members should be placed in areas with less visibility." I blinked. "Family members or just me?" He hesitated. That was enough of an answer. "She's under a lot of pressure," Mark said gently. "The groom's side is demanding, and Chloe is trying to impress them. I know," I said. And God help me, I understood it too well. But understanding didn't soften the bruise forming beneath my ribs. "Just be prepared," he added quietly, "if things feel different tomorrow." I nodded, though I didn't trust myself to speak. Mark left me to the wind, and the sound of distant laughter drifting from inside. As I stood there, a memory surfaced: Chloe at 17, begging me to take extra shifts so she could buy a dress for her senior prom. I had worked until my hands ached, and she had danced the whole night away, glowing with happiness. Back then, her smile felt like mine too. Now her smile felt like something I wasn't allowed to touch. When I returned inside, I passed the open door of a small powder room and heard two bridesmaids whispering. "Chloe's sister doesn't match the aesthetic at all," one said. "It's like they're not even related," I know the other replied. "But Chloe said she practically raised herself, so maybe that explains it." A laugh followed. A soft, ignorant laugh that scraped across my nerves. I stepped back before they could see me, my chest tightening. So she was rewriting the story now, cutting me out even from the past. Later, as the rehearsal wrapped and people drifted out to their rooms or cars, I caught Chloe in the hallway. She stood alone, adjusting her bracelet, looking every bit the bride she had always wanted to be. "Chloe," I said, gently stopping in front of her. "Can we talk for a minute?" Her jaw tightened. She glanced down the corridor where Brad waited, then back at me. "What's wrong?" she asked, impatient already. I swallowed. "Are you embarrassed of me?" Her breath hitched, but it was quick, almost invisible. "Melissa, don't start. I'm not starting anything," I said. "I'm asking you, because tonight felt like I was being pushed aside." "Chi," she whispered in Vietnamese, instinctively, something she only did when she slipped emotionally. Her eyes softened, then steeled again. "This wedding is huge. Brad's family is huge. Everything needs to be perfect. And we come from, a different background. I'm just trying to blend things. Blend things, meaning erase the parts of her life she didn't want anyone to see. I'm proud of where we came from," I said. "Well, I'm not," she answered quietly. "Not cruelly, just honestly." And that somehow hurt more. Before I could respond, Brad jogged over, looping an arm around her waist. "Ready, babe?" he asked, barely glancing at me. "Yeah," she said, leaning into him. He looked at me, then giving a small, dismissive nod. "Don't stress her out, Melissa. Tomorrow's a big day." Chloe didn't correct him. I stood there as they walked away, her head on his shoulder, the two of them glowing in the hallway light, perfect from the outside. Like a painting. And like most paintings, the beauty was only surface deep. Outside in the parking lot, the night air felt heavier. I sat in my car for a while, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but I didn't start the car yet. Something inside me was unraveling slowly, thread by thread. My phone buzzed a message from Mark. "Timeline finalized for tomorrow. Just a heads up. There may be changes. Please arrive on time. And Melissa, don't take anything personally tonight." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Don't take anything personally. The problem was everything about today had been personal. When I finally drove away, the resort lights faded behind me, leaving the dark road ahead. I kept my eyes forward, but the bruised feeling in my chest stayed with me all the way home. Tomorrow was the wedding. And somehow I felt less like the sister of the bride, and more like someone holding a ticket to a show she wasn't sure she still wanted to attend. The morning of the rehearsal dinner had already left a bruise on my heart, but the next day carved lines deeper than I expected. I arrived at Coral Pines early again, stepping into the courtyard where staff arranged chairs and adjusted floral arches under the soft golden sunlight. Everything looked perfect: lavender roses, ivory ribbons, crystal lanterns swaying lightly in the coastal breeze. A scene meant for fairy tales, for happiness, for sisters. But every time I took a step forward, it felt like I was walking into someone else's dream, one I had paid for, one I had helped build, yet somehow wasn't allowed to belong to. A young decorator walked past me carrying a box of candles. She offered a polite smile and then whispered to her coworker, not noticing how her voice carried, "Is that the sister I thought Chloe didn't want her showing up early?" I kept my face, still brushing the comment off like lint, but it stuck. Before I could go inside, Mark spotted me from across the courtyard. He jogged over, tablet in hand, sweat beading lightly at his forehead. "Melissa," he said with a breathy relief that didn't match the smile he forced, "I was hoping to speak to you before Chloe sees you." My eyebrows lifted. "Why, is something wrong?" Mark scanned the courtyard as if checking for witnesses. Then he lowered his voice. "I just wanted to let you know. There've been some changes to the ceremony flow." "What kind of changes?" he hesitated. "Chloe moved you off the front family row. You're seated near the back now." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. She said it was for aesthetic balance, he added quickly, as though that softened the blow. "The front row will be her bridesmaids' parents and Brad's family. She thought you'd be more comfortable elsewhere." Comfortable. That was a word people used when they were trying to hide something sharp behind soft fabric. I felt my jaw tighten, but I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." His shoulders loosened slightly, as though he'd feared I'd get angry. He didn't understand anger requires energy. What I felt was more like a cold, steady drip of reality, one drop at a time. Inside the ballroom, servers rehearsed their walking patterns with trays. Bridesmaids practiced how to hold their bouquets. Brad's groomsmen stood together, bragging about college antics, as if they were starring in a commercial for privilege. Chloe stood in the center of it all, glowing in a robe that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When she saw me, she gave a startled blink, like she hadn't expected me to show up early, despite being the one who begged me for 6 months to help organize this wedding. "Oh, you're here," she said, smoothing her hair. "We're just finalizing the rehearsal run. You can observe from the side." "Observe!" The word clanged in my chest. I managed a smile. "Of course." Chloe's bridesmaid stepped into position. I watched her walk down the aisle with that effortless grace she practiced all her life, grace I helped her build, paying for ballet classes, shoes, costumes, encouraging her to stand tall when she used to hunch from shyness. Seeing her glide now should have filled me with pride, but all I felt was distance. The rehearsal ended with polite applause. Chloe hurried off with her maid of honor to check her makeup. Brad approached me instead, hands in his pockets, shoulders squared as if bracing himself. "Melissa," he said stiffly. "Thanks for coming." Something in me bristled at the phrasing. Thanks for coming. Not thanks for paying, not thanks for making my fiancé's dream wedding possible, just coming. "You must be excited," I replied. He shrugged. "A lot of pressure. You understand." Did I? Chloe was not supposed to be pressured by me. She was supposed to be lifted by me, but lately I'd become the shadow she tried to outrun. Brad glanced toward the entrance. "Listen, Chloe's been stressed about everything being perfect. Family dynamic appearances, all of it. Just be easy on her today, all right?" There was something in the tone, something entitled that made my stomach turn. But I nodded anyway, because what else was I supposed to do? Argue, demand, beg to be valued. I'd done enough of that in the past year without speaking a word. After the rehearsal, everyone moved into the outdoor garden for a light meal. White canopies fluttered overhead, and the tables were arranged with hand-painted menus. I designed myself when Chloe wanted something unique and upscale. Guests hadn't arrived yet, so the wedding party had space to wander and mingle. I approached Chloe again to ask about giving her mom's earrings, but she cut me off before I got a sentence out. Not now, Melissa, she said softly but firmly. People are watching. There was no one watching, no one within 10 feet of us. But in Chloe's mind there was always someone whose approval mattered more than mine ever did. I stepped back, swallowing the ache rising in my throat. Of course. She nodded and hurried off again, leaving me standing beside a table decorated with orchids and tiny gold butterflies. Behind me I heard 2 bridesmaids whispering. "She dresses so," Normal one said. "It's sweet though," the other replied half-heartedly. No, Chloe told us she hates that her sister never tries to look classy for events. I closed my eyes. The comments weren't even cruel, they were thoughtless, tossed out like confetti that stuck to the ground and stained. Inside the ballroom again, Mark motioned for me to join him near the service hallway. When I approached, he lowered his voice. "I shouldn't say this," he began, "but I think you deserve a heads up." I braced myself. "Chloe told the team that you're invited out of obligation. She didn't want us to rely on you for anything today." A bitter laugh slipped from me before I could stop it. Obligation, I repeated the word, marking another slice in an already frayed thread. I raised her. "I know," he said softly. "I know you did." For a moment the noise of the ballroom faded. All I heard was the echo of 12 years of packed lunches, school pickups, late-night homework illnesses, heartbreaks, whispered reassurances in the dark after nightmares. Obligation. Sure. Mark touched my elbow gently. Tomorrow might be a little unpredictable. I'm just saying be prepared. Thank you, I whispered. He stepped away when someone called his name, leaving me alone with my thoughts sinking like stones. Later, when the photographer called everyone outside for a sunset group photo, I didn't move fast enough. By the time I reached the terrace, Chloe and the bridal party had already arranged themselves into a perfect symmetrical cluster. "Could you step to the side?" the photographer asked politely. "We're doing family-only shots first." Family. I nodded and stepped out of frame, my smile frozen in place. As the sun dipped lower, casting pink over the water, I walked down to the lower patio where the noise of the celebration softened into the background. I reached for my phone, needing something to anchor myself. A text appeared from one of my coworkers. "Hope the rehearsal goes great." You must be so proud. Proud. Yes, I had been. I wished I still were. But now pride felt like a garment someone had quietly slipped off my shoulders. When the evening wound down, people began to leave. Chloe was radiant, hugging guests and laughing as if nothing in the world could touch her. Brad stood beside her, beaming as though he'd won something. I approached her one last time before heading out. "Chloe," I said gently, "before I go, I want to make sure we're okay." For a heartbeat, her expression faltered. It softened, almost broke. Then it hardened again, smoothed into the familiar, practiced smile. "We're fine," she said. "Just don't overthink things. Tomorrow will be perfect. Perfect for whom I didn't ask. I didn't argue. I didn't cry." I simply nodded and walked away, my heels echoing on the stone tile as I stepped into the cool night air. Once inside my car, I closed the door and let the silence settle like a blanket over a bruise. I sat there for minutes, staring at the steering wheel, replaying the day in small, painful loops. The comments, the distancing, the rewriting of our history, the shifting seats, the way Chloe looked at me like someone she needed to manage instead of love. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Mark. "Timeline is locked. Some updates were finalized after you left. Don't be surprised by minor changes tomorrow. Try not to take anything personally." I leaned back against the seat and exhaled slowly, the coastal breeze drifting through the cracked window. The stars above seemed faint, as though even the sky was pulling away into some unreachable distance. Tomorrow was the wedding, the culmination of all Chloe's dreams. And for the first time in my life, I felt myself standing on the outer edges of her world, fingertips slipping from the place I once held without question. I didn't know it then, but tomorrow wouldn't just shift the distance between us. It would break it completely. The morning of Chloe's wedding began with the kind of sunlight poets write about, soft gold spreading over the ocean, drifting through the curtains of my small apartment, warming my skin as if the world itself was blessing this day. I dressed carefully, choosing the navy dress with the modest neckline and the stitched hem I'd repaired the night before. Not flashy, not loud, just respectable, appropriate. I braided my hair the way Chloe always liked when we were younger. She used to say it made me look like someone who belongs in every room. I wanted to belong today, more than I realized until that moment. I placed our mother's earrings into a small velvet pouch, tucked it gently into my purse, and whispered into the empty room. "She would have loved to see you, Chloe." Then I grabbed my keys and stepped out into the crisp coastal air, letting the ocean wind cool the nerves simmering beneath my ribs. The drive to Coral Pines was familiar now, weaving along cliffs and blooming wildflowers. The closer I got, the more I rehearsed what I might say to Chloe. I would give her the earrings near the bridal suite door, maybe slip them into her hands before anyone noticed. She would smile, the soft one she rarely used these days. She would hug me. She would remember. That fantasy didn't even survive 30 seconds past the resort gate. As I turned into the entrance, my breath caught sharply in my throat. A jarring splash of red like a wound slashed across something mounted on a tall display stand beside the gate. My face. My face. Printed large in full color the way a security office might print the image of a shoplifter. And across that image in bold, merciless letters, "Do not let this person in." I froze in the middle of the driveway. My car idled, humming nervously, mirroring the sudden ringing in my ears. The world tilted, narrowing down to that poster. My smile frozen in an old snapshot. Chloe must have had a picture I'd once sent her after a long shift, still wearing my apron, proud of a small herb garden I'd grown outside my apartment. Now it was taped against metal like a warning label. I stepped out of the car because my body moved before my mind could register anything else. The sunlight, once soft and warm, now felt harsh, exposing. 2 security guards approached me. Their dark uniforms contrasted with the wedding florals behind them, white lilies and pink roses that now looked like a backdrop for a crime scene. "Ma'am," the taller one said, nodding toward the poster, "you are not permitted inside the venue." His tone was professional, not cruel. But professionalism can cut deeper than malice when it slices away your dignity without hesitation. "There's been a mistake," I whispered. "I'm the bride's sister." The guard's eyes flicked from me to the poster. "These were the instructions we received, ma'am. The bride approved the image. Approved. She didn't just know, she approved." My stomach twisted sharply. Behind the guards, laughter floated from inside the resort grounds, soft and elegant, the sound of champagne glasses, clinking of guests arriving early, for photos of a world I was meant to stand inside. "What happens if I try to go in?" I asked quietly. A younger guard stepped forward. "We were told to alert internal security. We can't allow you to cross the gate line." I blinked. Hard. Alert security, for me. He looked away. That told me everything. Before humiliation could suffocate me entirely, a breeze brushed against my cheek. I lifted my gaze automatically, and that's when I saw her. Chloe, standing on the balcony above the gate, framed by silk drapes fluttering in the ocean wind. Her wedding gown shimmered in shades of ivory and pearl. Her veil cascaded down her back. She looked beautiful, radiant, everything I wanted for her. She looked down at me, and she smiled, not wide, not bright, just a soft, relieved curve of the lips, a smile of someone releasing a tension she'd been carrying. A smile that said, "Finally. This part is dealt with." Next to her stood her future mother-in-law, Constance, wearing a champagne-colored dress clutching a crystal flute. The older woman leaned toward Chloe, said something behind her hand, and Chloe laughed lightly, lifting her glass in what looked disturbingly like a silent toast. My mouth felt dry. My lungs refused to expand. My feet planted frozen on the path. Maybe Chloe didn't realize I could see her so clearly. Or maybe she did, and that made the smile sharper. It took every ounce of strength I had not to collapse in on myself, not to let the pain spill out in sobs that would only prove their assumptions about me. My phone buzzed inside my purse, startling me. Reflexively, I pulled it out and saw Chloe's name. For one hopeful breath, I thought she was calling to explain, to apologize, to fix this. I answered. Chloe. But the line was filled only with laughter and clinking glasses. No voice, no words directed at me. She had called me by accident. She didn't even know she dialed. I hung up slowly, my hand trembling as I returned the phone to my bag. Behind me, a group of early guests approached the gate. They slowed when they saw the sign. One woman squinted at my photo, then at me, and whispered loudly enough for everyone, including me, to hear, "Isn't that the sister Chloe said wasn't coming? The one who might cause issues?" I felt heat rise to my face, but it wasn't embarrassment. It was clarity. The kind that slices straight through denial. One of the guards coughed gently. "Ma'am, we'll need you to turn around now." I turned toward my car, forcing my numb legs to move. But before opening the door, I paused. Something inside me, something old and long, ignored, shifted. I reached for the velvet pouch in my purse and held it for a moment, feeling the earrings inside. Mom's earrings. Chloe would never wear them now. Not with a man whose family believed wealth equaled worth. Not with a woman who wanted to erase everything that made her real. On the gravel near my tire, a small envelope lay half-crushed. One of the decor staff must have dropped it earlier. I bent down, picked it up, and realized it was addressed to me. When I opened it, a folded invoice slipped out, one of the many bills I had been handling for the event. Floral design, lighting, linen rentals. My name was listed as the billing contact. Of course it was. I had paid half already. The remaining balance sat waiting for approval. Waiting for me. Not for Chloe. Not for Brad. For me. I straightened slowly, the ocean wind lifting strands of my hair, as if to clear the fog clouding my mind. If they could plan to erase me from the biggest day of Chloe's life, then I had every right to erase myself from their expenses, from their assumptions, from their entitlement. Without another glance at the balcony, at Chloe's smile, at Constance's approving nod, I opened the driver's door and slid inside. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. Not because I didn't deserve to. I didn't cry because tears were a luxury I refused to waste on people who taped my face to a gate like I was a threat. As I turned the car around, the guard stepped aside. The poster remained behind me, growing smaller in the mirror until it disappeared entirely. The farther I drove, the clearer my thoughts became. The truth settled into me with a devastating calm. They didn't just shut me out. They ended something. A chapter. A role. A version of me that existed only to support Chloe, even when it cost me pieces of myself. By the time the coastline stretched beside me, waves crashing softly against the rocks, I knew one thing for certain. If Chloe believed her wedding would shine brighter without me, she was about to learn what her wedding looked like without my support. The ocean sparkled under the sunlight, as if nodding in silent agreement. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on the steering wheel, and drove forward, letting the clarity settle into resolve. Whatever happened next would not come from spite. It would come from truth. And from the moment Chloe chose to treat me like a stranger, she unknowingly freed me to act like one. I parked my car at a small overlook just beyond the resort, a quiet spot where the cliffs dipped low and the ocean stretched wide beneath me. I stepped out, letting the salty wind push through my hair, letting the roar of the waves drown out the echo of Chloe's smile, the same smile she'd given me from the balcony, as security guards blocked my path, like I was some kind of threat. For a long while, I didn't move. I just stood there, holding my purse against my chest, as though the small weight of it could anchor me to something solid. The pain had been sharp at first, like a shard of glass under my ribs, but now it had settled into something colder, something steady, something that didn't tremble or cry or beg. I reached into my bag and pulled out the crushed envelope, the invoice that had dropped by my car tire. The wind tugged at it, but I held fast, reading each line slowly. Floral arrangements, catering upgrades, venue reconfiguration, linen replacements, sound engineering. A total sum so large it made my breath stall for a second. My name was printed at the top in bold letters, billing contact, Melissa Hawkins. Of course it was. Every check, every deposit, every payment schedule my hands had put it all in motion. My savings, my overtime hours, the money I'd intended to use someday for a home of my own, it all sat in the bones of this wedding, a wedding I was forbidden to enter. I laughed softly, a sound that carried no humor, only disbelief. The ocean answered with another wave crashing against the rocks, its spray catching the light. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Chloe. I didn't answer. She didn't want to talk to me, not really. If she had wanted to explain, if she had wanted to soften the cruelty of that sign, she would have run down the stairs the moment she saw me at the gate. She would have shouted for security to stop. She would have ripped the poster down with her bare hands. Instead, she raised a glass. I let the phone ring until it stopped, then slid it back into my purse with a calmness that almost frightened me. Clarity often feels like anger stripped of every illusion. I stared at the sea a while longer before pulling out my contact list. My finger hovered over a name I hadn't thought about beyond logistics, Mark Redford. Mark, who had warned me quietly. Mark, who had looked at me yesterday as though he knew something might break. Mark, who had worked for me, once my student, my shadow, my loyal assistant during those grueling years at the restaurant. If anyone would understand protocol, it was him. I pressed call. He answered on the second ring, his voice breathless with noise behind him, the clatter of plates, the hum of guests, the distant swell of wedding music. Melissa, where are you? We were expecting you a while ago. I won't be coming, I said. There was a pause long enough for the ocean wind to fill the space between us. What do you mean you're not coming? The ceremony starts in less than 2 hours. I inhaled deeply, letting the truth settle into the shape of my spine. Mark, I'm withdrawing from the event. The event, he repeated. What does that mean? It means, I said with a steadiness even I couldn't believe the sponsor is pulling out. In the background, something metal clattered. I imagined Mark stopping mid-stride comprehension, cutting through his confusion like a blade. Melissa, he whispered, are you sure? Yes. But if you withdraw, I know exactly what happens. I cut in, my voice low. Implement the protocol. He didn't respond immediately. I heard a muffled voice asking him about champagne delivery, then his sharp reply. Hold for a moment before he returned to me. This will dismantle everything, he said quietly. It will shut down the service. It's already been dismantled, I replied. Just not on your end yet. He exhaled shakily. Tell me what to do. Switch to paper service, I instructed. Suspend open bar. Hold all premium alcohol until payment clears. Stop circulating appetizers. Kitchen can prepare orders only after they've been charged. And the wine cellar, he asked. Locked, I said. Everything in that reserve is under my name. Another pause. Then understood. His professionalism returned crisp and efficient. My training lived in him even after all these years. Mark Y added before he could hang up. Chloe knows I paid for the wedding, doesn't she, Melissa? His silence was my answer. Just say it. No, he said finally. She doesn't. She told the groom's family it was all her, that her side of the family had substantial funds. His voice dropped. She used the word legacy. Legacy. Built on the back of my sacrificed 20s and 30s. Legacy made from my exhaustion, my double shifts, my refusal to let her end up in foster care. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Mark, I murmured. I'm sorry, he whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for. The call ended. For a moment, I simply sat in the driver's seat and stared out at the water. The waves kept rolling relentless and unbothered, as if teaching me something about endurance, about how life moves even when people try to push you out of their shoreline. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a spectacle. I wanted balance. I wanted truth. I wanted to stop bleeding for someone who had long stopped seeing me as anything but a stepping stone. My hands no longer shook. I drove until I found a stretch of beach quiet enough for a lone figure to stand unseen. Parking along the sand, I stepped out and walked barefoot toward the water's edge, the cold ocean licking at my ankles like a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of choosing what happened next. Another wave pulled at the sand beneath my feet, dragging grains away in a slow, inevitable pull. It felt like a metaphor. I sank into the sand, hugging my knees, letting the wind wrap around me like an old friend. The pain hadn't vanished. It lingered but quieter now, muted beneath a steady thrum of resolve. My phone buzzed again. Brad. I ignored it. Another buzz. Constance. I ignored that too. Then Chloe. I watched her name appear and disappear like a heartbeat on a monitor. Why now, I whispered to the screen. Why only when you need something from me I pressed decline? If she wanted a wedding without me, without my presence, without the history that shaped her, she could have one. But she would also have one without my funding. The sky above the ocean stretched wide and open, a vast horizon that reminded me the world was bigger than this betrayal, bigger than Chloe's shame, bigger than the hollow space where my hope had been this morning. I stood slowly, brushing sand from my legs, and walked back to my car. As I slid into the seat, a strange calm settled in me, solid, sharp-edged, unshakable. For 12 years, I carried Chloe. I fed her, clothed her, fought for her. I gave her the childhood she deserved. I paid for the life she wanted. And in less than 12 seconds, she had erased me at the gate of her perfect little world. Well, now she could see what her world looked like without me holding it up. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed to life, smooth and obedient. I stared ahead at the winding road, then at the sliver of the resort peeking out between the trees. "If you think removing me makes your life shine brighter, Chloe," I murmured softly, "let's see how bright it is without the lights I paid for." I put the car in drive. Behind me, the ocean crashed in approval. Ahead of me waited the quiet storm I had just unleashed, one I had no intention of stopping. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel powerless. I felt free. The first sign of trouble wasn't the silence. Not yet. It was the music, stuttering, not stopping, just glitching like a scratched CD right in the middle of the string quartet's rendition of Canon in D. Guests were seated beneath the floral canopy, fanning themselves lightly, as servers floated around with champagne flutes. Everything looked perfectly timed, perfectly polished, perfectly expensive. And then the speakers crackled, the violinist hesitated, and the music died altogether with a dull pop. People glanced up in confusion. A woman in a glittering silver shawl frowned. "Is this part of the program?" Her husband shook his head. "Certainly not. This is a wedding, not a sound check." Servers halted mid-step their trays, hovering awkwardly in the air. One of them, a young man with freckles, froze right beside a guest reaching for champagne, then quickly pulled the tray away. "Excuse me," the young server murmured, "we're momentarily pausing bar service." The guest blinked. "Why, this is an open bar." "Yes, ma'am, but bring it back," she snapped, waving him away. He didn't move. "I'm sorry, I can't." Across the garden, confusion rippled like a wave. The atmosphere lost its glossy sheen. People whispered, brows furrowed, shifting in their seats. And then, as if on cue, several servers shuffled toward the tent exit trays, lowered eyes fixed forward with the trained blankness of staff under strict orders. That was the moment the wedding began to fall apart. Inside the bridal suite, Chloe was adjusting her veil in front of a mirror framed in orchids. Her bridesmaids fluttered around her like pastel butterflies. Her maid of honor, Lila, rushed in breathlessly. "Chloe, something's wrong out there." Chloe didn't turn. "What do you mean wrong?" The music stopped, Lila said. "And servers are pulling champagne off tables." Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's probably a timing reset for the ceremony." "No," Lila insisted. "It looks serious." Before Chloe could answer, the suite door opened again, and one of the assistant coordinators appeared. She clutched her tablet as though it were a shield. "Chloe," the coordinator said, voice tight. The audio team says the licensing for your string arrangements hasn't been paid. They're refusing to play anything else until payment clears. Chloe whirled around. What are you talking about? My sister already paid everything. The coordinator blinked. Your sister? She hesitated. We were told Ms. Hawkins was the primary sponsor, but she just called. And she withdrew. Silence fell across the suite. Even the air seemed to freeze. What Chloe said, her voice thin. She wouldn't do that, the coordinator whispered. And without the sponsor, all premium services default to pay-per-use. Lila gasped. A bridesmaid muttered, "Is that—" Aloud, Chloe took a step back, knocking into the vanity chair. This is insane. Melissa wouldn't sabotage my wedding. The coordinator swallowed. I'm sorry, but unless someone pays the outstanding balance, nothing can proceed. Chloe's pulse surged painfully in her neck. Where's Mark? I want Mark. He's managing the transition, the coordinator said, already backing away. I'll send him here. She left in a hurry, leaving a room full of stunned bridesmaids staring at Chloe as though expecting her to fix everything. Chloe's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She tried calling me. When it went straight to decline, her breath hitched. No, she whispered. No, she just needs a minute. She'll answer. She tried again, declined. Again, declined. Her reflection in the mirror blurred. This was not how the morning was supposed to unfold. Downstairs in the reception tent, Mark stepped into the center aisle with the posture of a man bracing for a tidal wave. He had switched out his clipboard for a sleek black tablet, the one containing all the emergency protocols I had once drilled into him when he worked under me. He tapped his earpiece. Stage crew halt all performance. Bar staff suspend premium beverage service. Catering stall all outgoing dishes. Charge by order only. Servers around the tent nodded sharply. A wealthy-looking guest waved a hand at him angrily. Young man, why isn't the champagne being served? This is a disgrace. Mark bowed politely. My apologies. Due to a change in the sponsorship arrangement, we are required to switch to a pay-per-service model. What the man sputtered. This is absurd. Who's paying for all this? Before Mark could answer, another guest chimed in. Didn't the bride's family cover everything? That's what she said last night. Someone else whispered. Maybe they couldn't afford it after all. Brad's uncle, a large man with a booming voice, stood abruptly. Where is the bride? We demand clarification. Guests murmured louder, now echoes of disapproval gathering like storm clouds. Brad appeared then, his jaw tight. He strode toward Mark, grabbing him by the arm before lowering his voice. What the hell is going on? We no longer have a sponsor, Mark said calmly. What do you mean? Brad hissed. Chloe told me her sister had it all covered. She told me her family had money. Mark raised both brows. Sir, all invoices, all signatures, everything for this event, it's all under Melissa Hawkins. She has withdrawn her financial support. Brad staggered back a step as though struck. My God, Brad muttered. She said her family came from old money. Mark blinked. They were struggling when she was a child. Melissa worked 2 jobs to raise her. Brad's face went pale, and then red, and then furious. Upstairs, Chloe paced the suite, her veil trailing behind her like a broken ghost. Where is Brad? Why isn't he here? Maybe he's handling the situation, Lila offered weakly. And why isn't anyone playing music? Another bridesmaid asked. Shouldn't we be taking photos? Chloe clenched her jaw. I will fix this. She pushed through the door and practically flew down the stairs toward the tent, clutching her dress to avoid tripping. The moment she stepped inside, the whispers swarmed around her. That's the bride, ask her. She said her sister was rich. No, I heard her family was poor. Who pays for a wedding and then disappears? She must have lied. Chloe's breath came shallow and rapid. She spotted Brad standing near the head table, his hands braced against the back of a chair. When he looked up at her, there was no warmth in his eyes. Only suspicion. Only anger. She rushed to him. Brad, thank God. There's been a misunderstanding. Melissa misunderstanding, he cut in sharply. You told me your sister was paying because your family had money. No, I said, Chloe faltered. I said she had everything handled. He stared at her with disgust. You told my mother you came from a wealthy background. I just wanted to fit in, she whispered. I didn't want them to look down on me. His jaw tightened. So you lied. I didn't lie, she insisted. I just didn't tell the whole story. That your sister raised you alone after your parents died. That she worked herself into the ground so you could have opportunities, that your entire life came from her sacrifice. Brad's voice rose. You hid all of that. It doesn't matter now, she cried. We just need to fix the payment issue. With what money, Chloe? You said Melissa had it. She will pay. She always does, Chloe said desperately. There was a hush behind her as several guests leaned in. Brad stepped back, shaking his head. Call her. Chloe's hands shook as she dialed again. The phone rang once, twice, decline. Her knees wobbled. She's probably driving, she said weakly. Or she's done with you, someone muttered behind her. The words were quiet, but they struck like an axe. The tension in the tent thickened as more staff left their stations collecting linens and returning unused glasses to crates. The guests, offended and confused, began drifting toward the exits. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving. My shoes are ruined and I haven't even gotten a drink. What kind of family doesn't pay their bills? Shh. Don't say that. Why? It's embarrassing. Chloe spun in place, tears burning behind her eyes. Please, she called out. Everyone please stay. We're just having a small delay. But no one listened. Servers pulled centerpieces off tables. The lighting crew dimmed the chandeliers one by one. The DJ turned off his console and unplugged cables with clinical efficiency. It was the quietest implosion I had ever orchestrated. And I wasn't even in the room. Brad moved closer to Chloe, lowering his voice, but not his volume. Do you have any money at all? She shook her head helplessly. My God, he said, running a hand through his hair. My mother will destroy me for this. Brad, please don't leave me, she cried. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was devastating. Chloe stumbled backward, gripping the edge of a table as her dress snagged on a loose nail. The entire structure shook, and a glass vase tipped, shattering against the floor. Guests gasped. A bridesmaid stepped away from Chloe as if proximity alone might stain her image. The wedding had officially collapsed. And Chloe was finally realizing she had built her new life on a foundation she'd never acknowledged, the foundation I had given her. Far away at the overlook, I watched the waves rise and fall, unaware of every detail, but intimately aware of the storm unfolding. I didn't need to see it. I knew exactly how these things unraveled when someone pulled the money thread holding the tapestry together. I leaned against the hood of my car, arms folded, and whispered, not in victory, but in truth. You wanted a wedding without me, Chloe. Now you have one. The ocean crashed softly in reply, and I closed my eyes, letting the wind wash away the last remnants of the sister I had been. Tomorrow, everything would change. But today, justice had only just begun. Brad's voice was the first thing Chloe heard after the crowd began to thin, a sharp, angry sound that cut through the tense, fading chatter. She spun toward him, her veil swaying, her eyes wide with desperation. Guests were scattering like startled birds, whispering behind manicured hands, while servers quietly dismantled what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Brad, she choked out, reaching for him. I can explain. Explain what he demanded, stepping back so her fingers grasped nothing but air. That your entire image, your background, your money, everything you told me was a lie. I didn't lie, she said quickly, shaking her head so hard her earrings trembled. I just didn't tell you everything. That's called lying, Chloe. His voice rose, drawing more curious glances. You told me your family was stable. You said your sister was comfortable and would cover everything as a gift. You made it sound like this wedding would be seamless because you had resources. I do, she insisted. I had Melissa. She always. Exactly, he snapped. She's not you. She's not your bank account. She's not your inheritance. The word inheritance landed like a punch. Chloe's throat tightened. I didn't think she would pull out. I didn't think she'd ever leave me like that." Brad let out a harsh laugh. "Well, she did. Because you clearly treat her terribly." A few bridesmaids exchanged wide-eyed looks. One whispered, "He's right," before slipping out of the tent. For the first time since arriving, Chloe truly saw the space around her not as a stage for her dreams, but as the aftermath of a disaster. Chairs half-stacked, centerpieces gone, table linens folded away, music equipment unplugged, guests squeezing past each other to leave early muttering complaints about poor planning, about embarrassment, about wasting their morning on a wedding that crumbled before it began. Her wedding. Her carefully curated, meticulously crafted, obsessively designed wedding. And all of it slipping from her fingers like dry sand. Chloe turned back to Brad, trembling. "Please listen to me. I just wanted to fit into your world. I didn't want your family to think I was poor." Brad finished, eyes narrowing. "Unworthy." She swallowed hard. "Yes," he scoffed. "You should have worried about being honest before worrying about being impressive." "My mother is livid. She said your behavior is humiliating." At the mention of Constance, Chloe flinched. "Where is she?" Brad pointed toward the entrance of the tent. Constance stood there, arms crossed tightly over her sequined dress, her expression carved from granite. She looked Chloe up and down as though seeing her for the first time, and perhaps she was. Chloe took a step toward her. "Mrs. Aldridge." But Constance raised one hand sharply. "Don't, not right now." "Please, I can explain." "There is nothing to explain." Constance cut her off. "We trusted you. You told us your family was well off. Influential. You said your sister funded your lifestyle and that she would sponsor the entire wedding." "I thought she would," Chloe said desperately. "She always has." Constance's lip curled. "Do you hear yourself? You don't even claim responsibility for your own life." Brad placed a hand on his mother's arm, but she brushed him off and stepped closer to Chloe. "And now," Constance continued, voice low but deadly clear, "your sister has revealed the truth. You have nothing, no money, no stability, no legacy. You lied to everyone here just to climb above the station you were born into." Chloe felt the world tilt. I didn't mean..." Constance leaned in just enough to deliver the final blow. Brad should have married a woman of equal standing. Instead, he nearly tied himself to someone who can't even pay for a glass of champagne at her own wedding reception. A few guests gasped. Someone stifled a laugh. Another whispered, "This is unbelievable." Shame rushed hot and burning up Chloe's neck. "No," Chloe whispered, shaking her head. "This isn't who I am." "I can still fix this," Brad snapped. How? With what money? With what honesty? With what plan? His words shredded the last of her composure. But then his voice softened, not kindly, but with the tone of someone realizing something unpleasant and undeniable. He stared at her with a mix of pity and frustration. "You used me," he said quietly, "just like you used your sister." "I didn't." "You did," he said firmly. "You wanted my family name, my family's influence. You wanted to escape where you came from so badly that you pretended you belong here." Chloe's breath hitched. "Brad, I love you." He shook his head. "No, you loved the idea of what you could be with me." Then he looked toward the exit. "And now you have nothing." Constance touched his arm again. "Brad, let's go. We shouldn't be here when the staff demands final payment." Chloe reached out, clutching Brad's wrist. "Don't leave me, please. We can figure something out together." He pulled his hand away. "No, you figure it out. You put yourself here." And with that, Brad turned and walked away. Constance followed, heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor as if punctuating each of Chloe's failures. Guests parted for them, whispering, some sympathetic, others judgmental, most simply eager to avoid the emotional wreckage happening in front of them. For a moment, Chloe stood frozen, a statue of white silk and shattered pride. The air around her felt tight, suffocating. A few final guests hurried toward the exit, avoiding eye contact. She was alone in the middle of an unfinished wedding. Not the fairy tale she envisioned. not the triumph she wanted. Just an empty room holding the consequences she never thought she'd have to face. A soft voice broke the silence. "Si, Chloe." It was one of her younger cousins, a girl of 15. She stepped forward uncertainly, hands clasped in front of her. "Do you need help?" Something inside Chloe cracked. Her legs buckled. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." The girl hesitated, then hugged her awkwardly before hurrying out to join her parents. Chloe sank into a chair, careful not to tear her dress but unable to stop shaking. Her phone buzzed from within her veil. She snatched it eagerly, but it wasn't me calling her back. It was a notification. Bank alert transaction declined. Chloe stared, confusion clouding her expression. Then another buzz, another alert. Credit limit exceeded, insufficient funds. She felt sick. She had tried to use her card earlier for a brunch deposit. She thought it was a system error. It wasn't. The alert was real, and it meant she didn't even have enough left to cover a hotel room for the night. She pressed her palms to her forehead, fighting a rising wave of panic. "Melissa," she whispered into the quiet, hollow space around her. "Please answer. Please." She dialed me again. "Decline." She tried again. "Decline." Her voice cracked. "Please don't do this to me. I need you." But need was not the same as love. And love was not what she had offered when she taped my face to a gate. She stood slowly, tugging her veil away harshly, dragging it across the floor like a defeated flag. Her dress, once pristine and shimmering, felt heavy, now suffocating. The perfect symbol of everything she had tried to become. Everything she wasn't. Everything she had betrayed. When she finally stepped outside the tent, she saw the last few guests leaving the grounds. 2 servers rolled away the dessert tier. A florist wheeled carts of unused arrangements back toward a van. The lighting crew was already dismantling the arch she'd requested last minute, the one I paid extra for, because she said it reminded her of a flower tunnel she'd always wanted to see in Japan. "Wait," she whispered. But they didn't wait. They couldn't. The event was over and nothing belonged to her anymore. She stumbled toward the driveway. A valet approached politely. "Miss, do you need your car brought around?" She shook her head helplessly. "I didn't drive." "I came with." She swallowed hard. Never mind. Her feet carried her forward on instinct alone. She felt the sand of the path shift beneath her heels as she approached the front gates. And there it was. The poster of my face still hung there. The red slash across it. The words, "Do not let this person in." The decision she made, the cruelty she chose, the moment her wedding began to die. She crumpled forward, hugging herself as tears blurred everything. "Melissa." She sobbed, voice breaking. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But apologies spoken only after the collapse feel like whispers in a storm. Too quiet, too late. And the storm wasn't over yet. Not for Chloe, and not for me." I sat in my parked car along the coastline, the sun dipping lower, painting the water in shimmering streaks of orange and gold. The ocean had always been my refuge, a place where thoughts untangled and pain softened. But today the waves weren't calming. They were roaring, pushing and pulling inside me, stirring memories I had spent years burying. Chloe's face kept flashing in my mind. That moment on the balcony. That smile. Not playful, not nervous, relieved. Relieved to see me turned away like an inconvenience finally handled. Every time I replayed it, something inside me tightened. My phone lay face down on the passenger seat, vibrating every few minutes, calls from her from numbers. I didn't recognize likely Brad's family or event staff trying to salvage what they didn't know was already beyond repair. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I let the wind whip through the cracked window and breathed in the sharp scent of the sea. I needed air, space, distance from everything that had been built around Chloe these past months, an image so carefully curated that there had been no room left for the truth. Or for me. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. But the next sound wasn't a call. It was a notification, a voicemail from Mark. Against my better judgment, I picked up the phone and pressed play. His voice came through, rushed, breathless, and underscored by chaos in the background. "Melissa," he said, "the protocol is fully in motion. The premium stock is secured. Payments are being declined across the board. Guests are frustrated, confused. Brad and his mother are livid. I'm doing what I can to manage fallout, but it's escalating. I closed my eyes. Of course it was. Mark continued, his voice dropping lower. Chloe's been asking for you. I think she's realizing the entire event depended on your funding. She keeps saying, my sister will fix this. She doesn't understand what she's done. A bitter ache spread through my chest. She still expected me to rescue her. Even now, even after everything. Mark hesitated. Melissa. Do you want me to speak to her? Should I tell her anything on your behalf? I ended the voicemail before he finished. I didn't owe Chloe an explanation. Not after being treated like a liability, like something to hide, to erase. I had spent more than a decade being her anchor, but anchors eventually rust when dragged through enough storms. The wind shifted, lifting strands of my hair, pulling me back into myself. For the first time in hours, I felt the steady drum of clarity in my chest. The same clarity I used to make hard decisions when Chloe was little, choosing bills over sleep, food over comfort, responsibility over rest. A new message popped up, a long one, from a number saved years ago under social worker, case past due. My heart dropped. I hadn't thought about her in years. I opened it. Melissa, I hope this reaches you. I heard through an old colleague that Chloe is getting married today. I always admired what you did for her, raising her alone after everything. But I wanted you to know something important, something you never allowed yourself to hear back then. My pulse quickened. You deserved better support. You were only 23 when you took her in. You were a child raising a child. And Chloe, she loved you, but she also relied on your strength so completely she never had to develop her own. My breath caught. If she's pushing you away now, it isn't ingratitude alone. It's fear. Fear that she can't stand without the sister who always saved her. You've done enough, Melissa. More than enough. I stared at the words, stunned. Memories tumbled forward. Late nights with Chloe curled into me, crying after nightmares about our parents. Her clinging to my shirt when the adoption counselor introduced the idea of guardianship. Her first day of school when she whispered, "Don't leave me," even though I had to be at work. Her teenage years, angry, defensive, rebellious, screaming. I was ruining her life every time I tried to guide her. Her first heartbreak when she came home devastated and said, "No one will ever take care of me the way you do." Maybe that was the root. Maybe she never learned how to exist without me holding her world together. And maybe today she tried to cut that cord the cruelest way possible before I could ever cut it myself. I placed my phone on the dashboard and let my head fall back. Was I wrong for pulling out so abruptly? Was I cruel? Was I retaliating? I had been invisible to her for months, useful only as a checkbook. And today she made that official by banning me from her life in front of 2 security guards and a balcony full of guests. If she couldn't see the difference between support and servitude, then stepping back wasn't cruelty. It was necessity. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Mark. Chloe fainted. My breath hitched. I sat upright instantly. Another message followed before I could react. She's awake now, just shocked. She tried calling you. She keeps saying she didn't mean it. Thought the sign was just temporary, decorative. Some twisted joke someone convinced her was normal. I inhaled slowly. Decorative. Temporary. Someone convinced her. Constance, of course. I read the next message. Brad left. His family left. Half the guests left. Chloe is alone. She's asking for a ride home. A ride home. As if nothing had happened. As if today hadn't torn something open between us that might never fully close. My fingers hovered over the reply button. I didn't type. Not yet. I needed to breathe, to think, to step away from the emotional pull Chloe always had over me. A seagull flew past its wings, slicing through sunlight, and for a moment I envied its freedom. Weightless, unbound, immune to the emotional gravity that held sisters tethered even through hurt. The sea roared and my thoughts drifted back 12 years. Our parents' funeral. The day Chloe clung to my coat and whispered, "You won't leave me too, right?" And I promised her, a promise I had never broken. But promises built on guilt weaken over time, and today she had snapped the rope entirely. Another text arrived, but this one wasn't from Mark. It was from Chloe. A picture message. My stomach twisted before I even opened it. It was a photograph. Her wedding arch half dismantled, her bouquet lying crushed on the ground. Her makeup streaked from tears. Her dress dirty at the hem. Her eyes swollen, pleading in a way I had never seen before. Below it she'd typed, "I need you. Please come back." I didn't mean any of it. The wind outside fell still as if the world were waiting for my answer. I stared at her message. My heart pulled taut between past and present, between obligation and self-respect. Part of me wanted to run to her, wrap my arms around her, bring her home, tell her that everything would be okay. But another part, the quiet part, the part that had grown older, wiser, bruised, but strong, knew something else. If I rushed in now, nothing would change. She would learn nothing, and the cycle would repeat. She would hurt me again, because I had never shown her what pain she caused. My phone buzzed once more, a final message from Mark. "Whatever you decide, remember she's an adult. You're not abandoning her, you're letting her face reality. Reality. Something she'd never had to confront because I shielded her from every consequence." I placed both hands on the steering wheel, grounding myself. The horizon stretched wide in front of me, vast, bright open. Maybe for the first time I had a horizon of my own to step into. I exhaled slowly, then typed my reply not to Chloe but to Mark. "Don't let her leave the venue alone. Call her a taxi. I'll pay for that, nothing more." He responded instantly, understood. I set the phone down. Chloe's messages remained unread. The waves rolled in again, steady and powerful, each one smoothing the jagged edges inside me. I whispered into the wind, "I'm not her mother. I'm her sister. And sisters aren't meant to be sacrificed." This time I didn't wait for the ocean to answer. I already knew. The tide had turned. The taxi rolled to a stop outside my apartment building just as the last stripes of daylight slipped behind the neighboring rooftops. I watched the sky dim from my window, the soft orange bleeding into purple, then into the ink blue of early night. It should have been a peaceful hour, the time when most people were settling into routine, switching on lamps, heating dinner, letting the day ease off their shoulders. But inside me, everything still trembled with aftershocks. I saw the taxi pull away. I saw the lone figure left behind on the curb, small, hunched, holding the train of her wedding dress up out of instinct even though its hem was already ruined. The veil hung limp over her shoulders. Her bouquet was gone. Her hair was coming undone in wild strands around her damp cheeks. Chloe didn't look like a bride anymore. She looked like a girl who had run too fast and too far and suddenly realized no one was running behind her. She stood there for a while as if unable to make the final decision to approach the building's entrance. I didn't move from the window. I couldn't tell if I was rooted in sadness or exhaustion or something deeper, something like clarity that pressed gently but firmly against my ribs. Finally, Chloe lifted a trembling hand and buzzed the intercom. I watched it light up in the hallway. She didn't say anything through the speaker, not at first. I could almost picture her on the other end, swallowing hard, struggling to find the voice she hadn't used with me in months. Not the demanding one, not the dismissive one, but the one she used to have before she outgrew needing me. Before she thought she outgrew love altogether. "Melissa." Her voice finally cracked through the intercom, soft and small. Please let me in." For several seconds I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but because letting her in too quickly might mean nothing would change. She wouldn't see what today cost. She wouldn't see what she broke. And I needed her to see it. I pressed the button. "Come up." The door unlocked with a buzz. I stepped away from the window and walked to the doorway of my apartment, leaving it open just a sliver. My heart was pounding, not from anger, but from the weight of a conversation that had been waiting for years. The elevator dinged softly down the hall. Chloe stepped out slowly, her heels in her hand, now barefoot on the cold tile. Her dress was wrinkled, smeared, torn near the knee. Her eyeliner had streaked down her face like rain marks on glass. She stopped when she reached my door. "Mel." She breathed my name like a plea. I opened the door all the way but didn't move to touch her. I didn't step forward. I didn't pull her into my arms the way I might have once, the way I had done 1,000 times before. She looked at me, searching for the familiar softness. But today I didn't give softness away for free. She entered slowly. The moment the door closed behind her, something inside her collapsed. She sank down onto the bench near the wall, gripping the fabric of her dress. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." The room went silent. I didn't speak, not yet. Chloe's breath shuddered. "You're probably furious. I deserve it. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it." She looked at her hands twisting in her lap. "I shouldn't have let them put up that sign. I shouldn't have listened to them. Constance said it was normal, that sometimes brides limit immediate family to avoid distractions. She said it wasn't personal." "Wasn't personal?" I finally asked, my voice quiet. Chloe flinched at the tone. She kept her gaze down. I know how it sounds. But she convinced me that it would make everything easier. And I wanted things to go smoothly. I wanted Brad's family to think I belonged with them. "You wanted them to think I didn't belong," I corrected gently, painfully. Her shoulders curled inward. A long silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of my refrigerator and the distant drone of city traffic outside. "Chloe," I said softly, "look at me." She did. Her eyes were red, swollen, glassy with guilt. That sign wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a boundary one you drew. One that told every person who walked through that gate that I was nothing to you today. Not family, not welcome, not wanted. Chloe's lip trembled. "I didn't mean you approved it." That stopped her cold. I didn't think," she admitted in a whisper. "I didn't imagine how it would feel to you. I thought you'd still come in through the back or talk to staff or follow orders," I asked. "Or pretend I didn't see it." Her chest tightened visibly. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. Everything got out of control." I nodded once, slowly. Things like that happen when you lie about who you are and where you come from. Her eyes flashed with pain. "Brad left me," she whispered. "His whole family left. Everyone thinks I'm a liar. They think I used you. They think I'm trash." I exhaled through my nose. "And how do you see me, Chloe?" She blinked, startled. "What? How do you see me?" I repeated, stepping closer. "Your sister. Your provider. Your embarrassment. Your past." She swallowed hard. "You're my family. You're everything. I didn't want them to see where I came from. I didn't want them to look at you and judge me." "I raised you," I said quietly. "I worked for everything you have. I gave you every opportunity. And you erased me." Chloe burst into tears, covering her face. "I was stupid. I was selfish. I wanted a life that looked perfect. I wanted to feel like I finally mattered." "You've always mattered to me," I said. "I never needed you to be rich. Or impressive. Or anything more than yourself." She sobbed harder, her breath shaking. I know. But I wanted one day where I wasn't the girl whose parents died, whose sister worked double shifts to raise her, whose clothes were hand-me-downs until high school. I wanted to be someone new." "You became someone unrecognizable," I replied softly. She shook her head frantically. "Please don't give up on me. I can't lose you. I can't, Mel. I didn't think you'd walk away from the wedding like that. I thought you'd still show up, fix everything like you always do." There it was. The truth. The heavy, unforgiving truth of our relationship. "You don't need a sister," I said gently. "You need a savior, and I'm done being one." She lifted her face, stunned. I knelt down to eye level. Your life fell apart today because you built it on lies and assumptions. Not because I withdrew support. You were old enough to know better. Old enough to be better. Chloe wiped her cheeks. I can be. I swear. I'll fix everything. I looked at her with love, with grief, with exhaustion. You can't fix today, but you can change tomorrow. She nodded rapidly. I will. I'll prove it. I'll do anything. Then start by taking responsibility, I said. Not excuses, not panic, not expecting me to hold the weight for you. A pause. A long, heavy silence. Then she whispered, I'm scared, Melissa. I know, I said softly. Growing up is terrifying, especially when you've been protected for so long. I didn't mean to push you out of my life, she breathed. But you did, I replied. And you have to understand the damage. She let out a quiet sob. Do you hate me? No, I whispered, but I'm hurt. And that takes time. Her shoulders sagged with relief and shame. I stood up, offering her a hand. She took it slowly, as if unsure she deserved the gesture. You can stay here tonight, I said, on the couch. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps. Her breath trembled. Thank you. But Chloe, I added, meeting her eyes, I'm not fixing the rest of your life for you. This time you walk your own path. She nodded, tears falling again. I understand. As she curled up on the couch, still wearing the ruins of her wedding dress, I stepped quietly into my bedroom, closing the door behind me. I leaned back against it, letting the silence settle against my spine. My heart ached, but it didn't break. Not this time. Because this was no longer the story of a sister being used. It was the beginning of a sister finally being seen. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, Chloe could become the woman I had always hoped she'd be. But only if I stepped back far enough for her to walk forward on her own. Chloe didn't sleep. I knew it from the second I stepped out of my bedroom at sunrise and saw her sitting exactly where I had left her on the couch, wrapped in one of my blankets, eyes red and swollen hair loosened from yesterday's chaos. The early light poured across the room in soft gold, but it didn't soften her expression. She looked older, smaller, years younger, and years heavier at the same time. I walked into the kitchen quietly, not wanting to startle her, but she lifted her head as soon as she heard the faint clink of a mug. Mel, her voice cracked, Are you talking to me today? I poured water into the kettle before answering. Yes, we need to talk. Her shoulders sagged with a mixture of relief and fear. I made coffee for myself and tea for her, just like I used to when she studied late in high school, claiming she'd never make it through anything without me. I carried both mugs to the living room and set hers on the table before sitting across from her. She stared at the tea for a long moment, then whispered, I'm scared to ask. But what happens now? It was the right question. The one she had avoided for years under layers of dependence and denial. I folded my hands together. That depends on what you do next. She nodded slowly, bracing herself. Just tell me and I'll do it. That's the problem, I said softly. You want me to decide your life for you. Her eyes widened. That's not what I meant. It is, I replied gently. You've spent your whole life leaning on me. Even things you should have managed yourself, you waited for me to handle. Bills, school forms, rent, jobs, breakups. And now, your wedding. She winced. I know. I'm trying to understand why I depended on you so much. Because you never learned how not to, I said. I protected you from everything. Too much, maybe. Silence stretched. Chloe's hands tightened around the blanket. I don't want to be this person anymore. Good, I said, because yesterday showed you exactly where this version of you leads. Her breath hitched, remembering the wreckage of her perfect day. Brad won't talk to me. His mother blocked my number. My friends left early. And I don't know what to do. You start, I said, by facing the truth you've been hiding. She hesitated. Which truth? That you used me? I said, not harshly, but with painful honesty. Not consciously, not maliciously. But you did. Her face crumpled. I didn't want to. I swear, I just didn't think. I assumed you'd always be there. I assumed you'd say yes. You always said yes. And you never asked what it cost, I said. Emotionally, financially, personally. Chloe looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in her life. I didn't know how much you sacrificed. You didn't want to know, I said softly. Because knowing means responsibility. And you were terrified of being responsible for someone else's pain. Her breath quivered. You're right. I leaned back and exhaled. All right. Then here is the truth you need to hear now. She braced herself again, hands trembling. I'm stepping back, I said. Not from you, not forever, but from the role I've played in your life. She blinked rapidly, confusion flickering. What does that mean? It means I said you take ownership of your life from this point forward. Your debts, your decisions, your relationships, your recovery from yesterday. I will not fix it for you. She looked like she'd been hit in the chest. So, I'm on my own. No, I said firmly. You're not alone. But there's a difference between support and saving. I will support you. I will not save you. Tears spilled over her cheeks. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, I said gently, you can. You're strong, Chloe. You just never used that strength because I kept lifting things for you. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I want to try. I want to be better. I want to earn your trust again. Then start with honesty, I said. Honesty with me. Honesty with yourself. Honesty with the world you're about to rebuild. She nodded vigorously. I will, I promise. I studied her for a long moment. There was sincerity in her eyes, but sincerity isn't transformation. It's the door to it, not the path. I need to tell you something else, she said suddenly, her voice timid. About the sign. I felt tension coil in my chest. Go on. She swallowed. It wasn't originally my idea. The wording was suggested by Constance. She said it was a protective measure. She told me brides often put up signs to control family chaos. She made it sound elegant, normal. And you didn't question it, I did, she whispered. For a second. But I hated how she looked at me when I hesitated. Like I was uncultured. Like I didn't understand etiquette. She said if I wanted to be part of Brad's world, I had to cut off old baggage. Old baggage. My jaw tightened. That's what she called me. Chloe nodded miserably. I never repeated it because I knew how awful it was. But I let her plant that idea. I let her make me think distancing myself from you was necessary. And you were willing to go along with that, I asked. She burst into tears again. I didn't want to lose him, or his family. I thought, if I proved I didn't need you, they'd accept me. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing the admission. It was ugly, it was heartbreaking, but it was also honest. Chloe, I said, opening my eyes, if someone only accepts you when you hurt the people who love you, that's not a family. That's a trap. She nodded desperately. I know that now. I see it. I swear I do. Then don't let them break you further, I said. You're better than who you were yesterday. She inhaled shakily. I want to be. Good, I said softly. Then the next steps are yours to choose. She hesitated. Can I stay with you for a while, just until I get myself together? Yes, I answered, but with limits. A little while. You'll help with bills, groceries, responsibilities. We'll set boundaries. She nodded quickly. Anything. I'll do anything. A small silence fell, but this one felt different, less sharp, less wounded, more like the slow settling of dust after something heavy collapses. Chloe shifted on the couch. Mel, what did people say after I left? Did anyone blame you? No, I said. Most people didn't know what happened. Those who did know that if a wedding falls apart because the sponsor withdraws, the sponsor is rarely the root cause. She exhaled in relief. Thank you for not telling everyone everything. It wasn't their story to hear, I said. Will you tell me what you're going to do now? She asked. I paused. I'm taking time for myself, I said finally. Real time, not a few hours, not a weekend, actual space to breathe, to decide what I want from my life. She stared at me with wide, uncertain eyes. Are you leaving? No, I said. But I won't be your shadow anymore. Or your safety net. Or the person who sacrifices so you don't have to. She wiped another tear. I think I need to learn how to stand without holding on to you. Yes, I said gently. You do. A long, trembling breath escaped her. Mel, she whispered. Can you ever forgive me? I already am, I said softly. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, and it doesn't rebuild trust overnight. This will be work for both of us. She nodded, accepting it. Outside the window, morning fully bloomed, soft light spilling over rooftops, the sound of people beginning their day, the smell of bakery bread drifting faintly through the air. A new beginning. Not the one Chloe had planned, not the one I had expected, but maybe the one we both needed. Come on, I said, rising to my feet. Let's get you cleaned up. Then we'll make a plan. Her relief was palpable. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not giving up on me. I didn't answer right away. I simply reached out, brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, and turned toward the hallway. In the quiet that followed, I realized something with startling clarity. Yesterday was the day Chloe's world fell apart. But today was the day she began to build one that was real. And I finally began reclaiming my own. Chloe stayed with me for the first few days in a quiet haze, moving gently through my apartment like someone afraid to touch anything. She washed the dishes without being asked. She folded blankets. She cleaned the stovetop twice, even though it didn't need it. It was her way of trying to be useful, trying to shrink the space her chaos had taken up. But usefulness wasn't what I needed from her. Honesty was. Growth was. And those things don't happen when someone is tiptoeing. On the third morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook. Her hair was tied back, her face free of makeup, her wedding ring lying on the table beside her, as if it were something fragile and foreign. I'm making a list, she said without looking up. For what? She hesitated. For fixing my life. I poured myself coffee and sat across from her. Let's hear it. She read slowly, almost shyly. 1. Find a job. 2. Pay off my credit card. 3. Apologize to people I hurt. 4. Get therapy. 5. Earn back your trust. Her voice cracked on the last line. Good, I said with a steady nod. Those are steps forward. She looked surprised. You think I can do it? I think you can, I said. But only if you stop trying to jump ahead. Chloe frowned softly. What do you mean you're trying to fix everything at once? I explained. People who try that usually end up fixing nothing. She swallowed. So where do I start? Start where you are, I said, not where you think you should already be. She nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. Progress began in small, imperfect pieces. And over the next weeks, that's exactly how it grew. Chloe found a job first, nothing glamorous, nothing in the world of luxury she had tried to chase. She took a receptionist position at a small dental office a few blocks away. The hours were steady. The pay wasn't high, but it was honest, and she earned every penny herself. The first night she came home exhausted, she collapsed on the couch. I didn't know being on your feet for 8 hours hurt this much, she groaned. I smiled faintly. Welcome to adulthood. She let out a tired laugh. I guess I deserved that. You did, I said. But I'm proud of you. Her eyes softened a mix of gratitude and grief. I don't remember the last time you said that. I ran a thumb along the rim of my mug. You haven't given me much chance lately. Chloe exhaled shakily. I want to change that. And slowly she did. She learned how to budget sitting with me at the dining table while I showed her how to track her expenses. She called the bank to arrange a payment plan on her debt. I sat across from her, not speaking for her, not handling the call, simply letting her do it. Her hands shook the whole time, but she did it. And I watched her become someone I hadn't seen since she was a girl, someone who could bend without breaking. But where growth happened, discomfort followed. About a month after the wedding disaster, Chloe came home with a manila envelope in her hands and fear in her eyes. "What's that?" I asked. "Papers," she said weakly, "from Brad's lawyers." My stomach tightened. "Let me see." She shook her head. "I need to handle it myself. You said so." She stepped into the kitchen, opened the envelope carefully, and unfolded several pages. I watched her eyes scan each line, her breath shallow and shaky. "He wants the ring back," she whispered. "And he wants repayment for half the engagement party expenses." I leaned against the counter. Most of those expenses were mine anyway. "But he doesn't know that," Chloe said bitterly. "He thinks I spent this imaginary family money I pretended to have." "Do the papers mention the wedding cost?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. I think he knows they can't claim any of it without admitting they lied too." "Good," I said carefully. "So what will you do?" She swallowed. "The ring goes back, and I'll write him a certified letter requesting the breakdown of his claimed expenses." I nodded. This was the right move, measured, legal, responsible. She pulled out her chair and sank into it. "I hurt him, and myself, and you, and everyone. I don't know how I became that person." "People don't become selfish overnight," I said. "It grows quietly each time someone takes instead of gives, each time someone chooses shame over truth." Chloe flinched, "And each time someone assumes someone else will clean up their mess." She closed her eyes. "I'm trying, Mel. I'm trying so hard." "I know," I said gently. And she was. But the past doesn't vanish easily. Several days later, Chloe and I were walking back from the grocery store when someone called her name sharply. "Chloe." We turned. Lila, her former maid of honor, stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Chloe froze. "Lila." "Hi. I heard what happened," Lila said, stepping closer. "About the wedding, about Brad." Chloe nodded, eyes downcast. "Yeah, it was awful." Lila tilted her head. "You know, I don't think most people care that the wedding collapsed because of money. Weddings fall apart all the time. What people care about is how you treated Melissa." Chloe's breath hitched. "She raised you," Lila said softly. "Everyone knows it. Everyone knows she gave up everything for you. But you let Brad's family talk you into treating her like she was beneath you." Chloe let out a wounded sound. "I know. I regret it more than anything." Lila studied her for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, surprising both of us, and pulled Chloe into a brief embrace. "I'm glad you're trying," she whispered. "But you've got a long road back." Chloe nodded against her shoulder. "I know." Lila pulled back and gave me a small nod. I returned it. Then she walked away down the street. Chloe wiped her eyes. "I didn't expect anyone to forgive me." "Forgiveness isn't a door," I said. "It's a hallway." She sniffed. "How long is the hallway?" "As long as it needs to be," I replied. We walked the rest of the way home in silence, carrying groceries and unspoken truths between us. Weeks passed, and slowly the apartment shifted from tension to something gentler. One morning I found Chloe sitting at the table with a small stack of cash and a handwritten note. "What's this?" I asked. "My share of the rent," she said timidly. "And a little extra. For bills." I blinked, surprised. "Chloe, that's the first time you've ever paid rent." She smiled sadly. "I know." I sat down beside her, feeling something warm loosen inside my chest. "I'm proud of you." Her eyes shone. That means everything, and it did both to her and to me. But the real turning point came unexpectedly. I returned from work one evening and found Chloe sitting on the floor with a box photographs, letters, old report cards from when she first moved in with me. She held one picture up. It was the two of us from years ago, her in pigtails, me in my diner uniform, both smiling in a way we hadn't in years. "I lost this," she whispered. "I forgot who we were before I tried to become someone else." I knelt next to her. "You didn't lose it. You just looked away." She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Thank you for not looking away from me, even when I didn't deserve it." I pulled her into a gentle hug. Sisters don't give up. Not truly, but sisters also don't let themselves be erased. She clung to me, shaking with quiet sobs. I'm sorry, Mel. For everything. I know, I whispered, and I forgive you. But what matters now is what you build from here. She nodded against my shoulder. I'm going to build something real, something honest. That's all I want, I said. Later that night, after she went to bed, I sat alone on the couch and looked around the apartment. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something settle inside me. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, not because Chloe was suddenly healed, but because she was finally trying, and because I had finally stepped out of the role that kept us both trapped. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, hard talks, financial strain, emotional unraveling. But now there was room for growth, for change, for something healthier, something true. And as I turned off the lights, letting the apartment fall into quiet darkness, I realized something profound. This wasn't just Chloe's new beginning. It was mine, too. The morning Chloe moved out of my apartment was warm and bright, the kind of morning that made everything feel possible. She stood in the entryway with her small suitcase, nothing like the mountain of luggage she brought years ago when she first decided to temporarily live with me. This time she carried only what she needed, only what belonged to her. And there was something symbolic in that simplicity. I found a studio near the dental office, she said, smoothing her shirt with nervous hands. It's tiny, but it's mine. It's a good first step, I replied. She nodded, but her eyes shimmered. You really think I'm ready? You've been ready, I said. You just didn't know it until now. Her chin trembled, but she fought back tears. Chloe wasn't fragile anymore, not in the same way. She cried less, she broke less, she apologized more, and she had begun to hold herself up with effort, yes, but genuinely. She hugged me then, tight and warm and desperate in a way that wasn't rooted in fear, but gratitude. I love you, Mel. I love you too, I whispered. And loving you doesn't mean losing myself anymore. She pulled back, wiping her cheeks. I'm nervous. That's normal, I said softly. Nervous means you're stepping into something new instead of hiding in something old. She laughed lightly, a fragile but hopeful sound. You always say things like that. Someone has to, I teased gently. She picked up her suitcase, took one more breath, then walked out the door and down the hallway. I watched her through the peephole, not because I didn't trust her, but because I wanted to memorize this moment. The moment my sister finally began living for herself. When the elevator doors closed, something loosened in my chest, a final thread, tying me to a version of my life that no longer existed. The days that followed were quiet, but not lonely. For the first time in years, my apartment belonged entirely to me. I could hear my own thoughts again. I could cook for one without guilt. I could sit on the couch without waiting for someone to walk through the door, crying, exhausted, demanding, lost. And unexpectedly, I felt lighter. I started writing again, a hobby I'd abandoned when Chloe's needs took over my world. I bought plants and didn't worry about them being knocked over. I slept deeply without checking my phone in the middle of the night for Chloe's messages. I even took a weekend trip alone, a long drive up the coast where I walked barefoot along the shoreline and realized how much of myself I'd given away without noticing. 2 weeks after Chloe moved out, she invited me to see her new apartment. It's not fancy, she warned as she opened the door, or big, or decorated. But what I saw made my chest swell with warmth. It was small, yes, and plain. But it was clean and organized. A thrift store sofa, a tiny table set for one, an improvised bookshelf made of crates stacked neatly. A houseplant someone at work must have given her sat proudly by the window. And on the wall, taped carefully, was the photo she'd found in my box, the one from years ago of the two of us smiling outside the diner. You hung it up, I said softly. It reminds me who I want to be, she whispered. I pulled her into a brief hug, and she hugged me back with sincerity rather than desperation. Do you want to get lunch? She asked. My treat. I budgeted for it. I smiled. I'd like that. As we walked, she told me about her co-workers, her patience, her growing competence at juggling schedules and dealing with difficult clients. She didn't tell these stories to impress me. She wasn't performing. She was proud of herself. And she should have been. One evening a few weeks after that, Chloe called me, not crying, not panicked, but excited. I paid down one of my credit cards, she announced. Only a small chunk, but I did it with my own paycheck. That's wonderful, I said. Keep going, you'll get there faster than you think. And I applied for night classes, she added. Administrative management. If I work in the dental office long term, I want to grow. I paused, letting the pride settle through me like warm tea. Chloe, I said gently, you're becoming someone you'll be proud to know. She laughed. I hope so. I want you to be proud of me too. I already am, I said. Not because of what you're doing, because of who you're becoming. On the other end of the line, she wiped away tears. I could hear it in the slow shakiness of her breath. Thank you for giving me the chance to change. You gave yourself that chance, I reminded her. I only stepped aside. Months passed and our relationship settled into something healthier, less codependent, more intentional. We saw each other regularly, but not constantly. We talked about real things instead of avoiding them. She apologized again sometimes, not out of guilt but reflection. I forgave again, not out of obligation but understanding. She worked hard, she rebuilt, she grew. And I lived, not for her, not for anyone, but for myself. On the 1-year anniversary of her ruined wedding day, Chloe knocked on my door. She looked stronger, her posture straighter, her hair neatly styled, her clothes simple but confident. She held a small box in her hand. What's this? I asked. A thank you, she said. A real one. Inside was a keychain shaped like a lighthouse. Engraved on it were 4 simple words, for guiding me home. I blinked back tears. Chloe, she shook her head. You didn't fix me this time. You didn't rescue me. But you showed me the way back to myself. And that was more important. I pulled her into my arms this time without hesitation. You're allowed to fall, I whispered, but you're also capable of standing. She nodded against me. And now I know I can. We held each other for a long moment, the weight of the past year finally settling into something peaceful. That night after she left, I went out to the balcony. The sky was vast and dark and filled with stars, and the city hummed below like something alive and quietly triumphant. I thought of the girl I used to be, the girl who shouldered everything alone. I thought of the woman I had become, the woman who finally allowed herself to let go. And I thought of Chloe, the sister who lost herself and then found herself in the ruins. We weren't the same people anymore. We were something better. If you're listening to this story, I hope you take something with you. Forgiveness is powerful, but boundaries are too. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do for someone you love is step back far enough for them to walk forward. Thank you for staying with me through this long journey. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone in your own life, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you would have done in my place, and whether you believe people can truly change when given the chance. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you love.